This is Nancy Winandy of Yankton Thrive. Welcome to another edition of Coffee with the Candidates with our 2024 City Commission candidates. We have an election coming up on April 9th. City Hall Gym and North Fire Station number 2 will be your voting locations. And if you want to do absentee voting, that will start on Monday, March 25th. We have 4 candidates running for 3 City Commission spots this year, and I would like to introduce you to Craig Sommer. Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, Craig?
Hi, Nancy. Thanks for having me. I spent 34 years managing a national retail business here in town. I was married for just almost 36 years, and I did serve on the Yankton City Commission previously from 2011 to 2017. I have a daughter, Jennifer, who was born and raised here, who married Derek Thompson, also here from Yankton, and I have a 10-year-old grandson, Cohen.
Life as a grandpa, I'm sure, is fun.
It is.
So with all the candidates, either being current commissioners or former commissioners, what sets you apart from them?
Well, there are 2 very distinct differences between myself and the other 3 candidates. And the voters will decide if that's something important to them or not. But I have led successful projects for the community as a private citizen, a board member, a city commissioner, 30 plus years in business management. And a second point, important to me at least in my mind, is the city of Yankton is a $70 million a year, 140 employee business. And I'm the only candidate that's actually managed a business that deals with that kind of, that levels of finance and employees and financial planning, future progress, that type of thing. So in my opinion, that should be something that's, a positive in my favor.
Which leads us right into our second question of, in your opinion, what is the role of a city commissioner?
Okay, so I'm not sure what day the viewers are going to be viewing this, but today is March 6th. And yesterday in the Press and Dakotan on March 5th, I had a quarter-page ad literally defining what I consider the role of a city commissioner and decisions they've made. So if you don't mind, I am going to just take my ad and read it so people get a clear understanding of what I'm talking about. The city commissioners are the ones that formulate the big picture of the community. They've usually lived here a while, they're familiar with community leaders, and they understand the community's needs. Commissioners need to be our dreamers, our forward thinkers, the ones that push the community forward into things they haven't thought of before. I've stayed behind the scenes for 7 years and helped others to run and be elected, and it's time for me to step back out and get involved in it personally. Now, the easiest, I guess, way to sum it up quickly, there's 4 current city commissioners that I stay in contact with quite often, and they hear me say this all the time. The only role the city commissioner of Yankton actually has is to make Yankton the #1 small town in America. That's it. They don't need the city manager, city staff do not need city commissioners. If the city manager could pay bills, they operate the city's day-to-day operations just fine without a commission. They just need the commission for approval. Your commissioners are your 9 board of directors that oversee what goes on in the city, what gets done, what doesn't get done. And I think that's kind of been lost recently. I think they need to step up and push Yankton forward and think a little different from how we've done things in the past.
So in your ad that was in the paper, it talked about big ideas that never seem to advance. What are some of those ideas? I know you mentioned you had led a lot of projects. Maybe you want to talk a little bit more about other successful projects and some of the ones that you think should be advanced but haven't.
Well, there are dreams that Yankton had that they didn't achieve. If you want to talk about things I've personally been involved in. I spent the last 2 years getting the Mead Museum a free for eternity billboard on North 81. Took 2 years of my life, but that was for a very good organization, and it was a fun project to work on. Most recently, the last 6 months now, I've been on the Meridian Bridge 100th birthday centennial committee, which for everybody watching this, check out our events. It's going to be a fun spring and summer. But my contribution to that is to have brought the first drone show to East South Dakota. We are going to have a drone show as part of the celebration on July 5th. That was something when I first got on the committee, I decided I wanted to find something unique that matches the uniqueness of the bridge, and happened to find out about this company that operates out of Norfolk, Nebraska. But they run shows all over the world, and he was more than happy to come up and be a part of this. So those have been, like the last couple of years, some items I've been involved in that got completed.
And we will touch a little bit more on Meridian Bridge
Yes.
in a few more questions here, so I just don't want to leave that one hanging.
No.
But can you share with our viewing audience your perspective on the current city budget and what you might propose to do differently?
Well, understanding what's coming in a next question about the state sales tax revenues, the 24 and 25 budgets are, the 24s by necessity has to be a pretty bland budget. I mean, you've sat through the budget sessions with me too. I mean, a budget session in a good year is still give and take between 9 commissioners and city staff. I mean, everybody's not going to be happy. Everybody's not going to get what they want. You're trying to do what's best for the city. And there are definitely things, that I would prefer to focus on that other commissioners don't, and that's just part of the process. But the 24 and 25 budgets, like I said, they're a standard City of Yankton budget, just based on conditions that we're awaiting on. I mean, it's things outside of our control. So there's no big project, there's no big picture, there's no new initiative. There's a new housing initiative, but it's not it's not something that hasn't been done before. Let's put it that way. So.
Well, and the housing should not be on the city's budget either.
No.
That's on Thrive's budget.
No,
just to take ownership of that
That
item.
is, part of the budget process again, though, is the ownership you do with things like Yankton Thrive and United Way, and everybody else are all involved in that too. So.
Yeah, and I will agree with you. We have sat through many budget meetings together, and it's a lot of give and take from city staff as well as commissioners, and trying to prioritize with the limited funds.
It is.
What makes the biggest impact?
Staff members all have projects they would like to accomplish as well, and items they'd like to purchase.
In 2024, we are celebrating the 100th anniversary of the Meridian Bridge. What process would you propose or support regarding the long-term plans for the bridge? Because some people want to continue to repair it, some people would like to remove it, and all of that will need substantial funding.
It will. It's very important. And we will see moving forward how important it is. The bridge is very near and dear to my heart, as most people know. I mean, the city accepting the bridge is the reason I wrote a letter to Mayor Dan Speck at the time asking to be on the Parks Board, because I wanted to be a part of it. That's what led me to get involved in city politics. The Bridge Plaza, fighting for that, the fire feature for Cheryl, I mean, all that stuff down there is things I've invested in. So the sad part, though, is the bridge was another one of those things like the Summit Center that were gifted to the city. The bridge, Yankton accepted the bridge. The government poured $3.4 million, if I remember right, about $3 million in renovations into the bridge, handed it over to the city of Yankton, told them they had a 25-year life expectancy, and I think we're in like year 12, and there isn't a single penny allocated for renovations. There's no funding source in place. There's been nothing done to this point to save the bridge. So I'm as you can tell, I'm very much in favor of preserving it and keeping it for another 100 years if possible. But things need to be done, and they need to be done quick. I mean, you're not going to raise that kind of money that fast to that kind of level of restoration. So it's like a lot of other projects that have gone on in Yankton recently. There's a lot of dreams, but the dreams aren't being turned into goals, and they don't have a plan, and they don't have a plan of action, and they don't have time and resources committed to it. And that, as you can tell in my voice, is very frustrating to somebody that's served on the commission and got some of these things done. Now, I met with the city officials about a year ago to discuss this very problem. And I was told at that point that the city had to figure out how to fund an inspection on the bridge to find out what needs to be done and what the cost estimates are going to be. And that's been a year ago, and nothing has changed. So I will put it to people, to the voters watching this, as simply as possible. The city has not got a penny put away for the bridge in 12 years or for the inspection. And myself, as a private citizen, has $500,000 already fundraised to the restoration work. So you can decide what kind of person you want to elect to the commission, but I'm ahead of the restoration already, and they haven't even figured out how to fund the inspection yet. So clearly, I'm going to be involved in that if you decide to elect me to the commission this year.
So, do you remember, not trying to put you on the spot, what the
No.
cost of that inspection was?
It was large. It was going to be like a $300,000 or $400,000 inspection. It's not a cheap thing to do. But until you have the $300,000 or $400,000 inspection performed, you don't know if you're looking at a $3 million restoration or a $6 million or an $8 million, and you can't start on it. And there's no funding source in place, like all of the Meridian Bridge materials that are sold around the world don't donate a quarter from every purchase. The city doesn't have a funding source in place. There isn't anything like a GoFundMe kind of page you can even ask donors for. So it needs to get on. I mean, I do not want to be the person that watches the state come back in 10 or 12 years and blow that bridge up. I don't, I mean, maybe the bridge is too important to me than it should be, but that and Mount Marty's Chapel are the figures of Yankton. That's what we're known for around the Midwest. So I personally would prefer to save it, and we'll leave it at that.
So lots more to come on how to fund that.
Well, if you want to save it, you got to do something. You got to get a plan and some action items and get going.
And based upon your previous comments, you feel that should be led by commissioners?
It'll have to be. I mean, it'll be like a lot of things, as you are all aware of. I mean, the staff will present options to you, and finance office will present options how to pay for it. But every action that happens in the city is the commissioner's choice. So, if we have to set up a committee that's the city employees and city commissioners and preservation people and finance people, whatever it takes to get it done is what I'm going to get involved in.
So we have seen multiple economic development successes in 2023 with $100 million in building permits. What do you think about the current processes for economic development, and what would you propose continuing or changing?
Well, most people who have visited with me at all about it realize I am way more aggressive into recruitment and economic development than a lot of people are, just simply because of what I've witnessed over all the years in operating a business and going to all the cities in the 4-state region and working in businesses and seeing what goes on in other cities. So it's no secret that I don't think Yankton does enough. Yankton does enough for Yankton County. Yankton does not do enough regionally, reaching out further. So the simplest way I can explain it is I just happened to read an article about a week ago in the P&D, and it showed South Dakota's sales tax revenue increase for the year, for 23's end of year total. And for people that are watching this, every month in the paper you might see it, but they show how much the city's sales tax revenue grew by percentage that month, and they rank us. They have the top 10 largest cities, and Vermillion are in the ranking every year, or every month. And for the end of the year last year, Yankton was 8th out of the top 10. And I will just point out to everybody that Vermillion was first. So you better start watching for Vermillion too. But Yankton was 8th out of 10 overall. And as somebody that's ran a business that's competed against all these other towns, that's horrible to me personally as a businessman. I would be embarrassed. If I was 80th out of 100 stores in my company, there would be action items getting developed. There would be performance improvement plans being written up. There would be actions to take to try and correct that next year. That's your amenities money. Your sales tax and triple B is what funds a lot of the amenities in Yankton. And we were 8th out of 10, and I can't find any way to blame that on where we're at when Vermillion was first. So to me, the number one thing they have to do is find somebody. My question to the voters and to you is, if you were going to go address this with somebody in Yankton, you wanted to have a discussion with somebody about what's going on with the sales tax revenue, why were we 8th, what can we do to improve it next year, who would you talk to? That's not the city manager's job. It's not her job description. It's not community development's job description. Just ask yourself, who would you talk to about improving that, or who's working on it? That's my economic development point.
So, in all fairness, because I'm someone who follows sales tax pretty closely,
Yeah.
there was a several $100,000 correction
Yeah.
that was included in that, which lowered our percentage substantially
Yeah.
because there was incorrect reporting from one of the large entities in
Right.
Yankton that did shift that dramatically. And that
Yeah.
was over multiple years that error was corrected in the month. In 1 month, which set off a
Right.
change in the whole year. So
Right.
to the viewing audience, when they go back and look at sales tax, they're going to see this huge deficit that 1 month because there was a correction. And Lisa Yardley, at the City of Yankton Finance Director, can explain that probably more clearly than any of us as far as how this error happened, how it was caught and corrected. So. I do want to talk a little bit, as you talk about economic development, also in your advertisement in the P&D, you talked about the archery industrial complex on the east side that sits in a binder. So can you explain that a little bit more for the people who read the article, what you mean by that?
Right. That was way back, it was when it was still Yankton, the area of progressive growth. And that was a venture I was kind of involved in as a city commissioner. And it was just another dream that Yankton had, that had time and effort and money placed into it. There were renderings created. The land had been picked out. I think you still own the property out east here, but that was just that was another frustrating thing, that there was so much time and money invested into these things, and nothing ever became of it. It just got put away. I don't know if it's literally in a binder anymore. I don't know what happened to it. It just was never explored. And that's one of the things, I would like to get involved in again with Bruce Cull, is to try and get some movement on an archery industrial park or an Olympic training village, or both, whatever Bruce thinks is more feasible or more easily attainable. It was another one of those projects, like both of the Design South Dakota efforts we had, the Onward Yankton, 500 ideas from citizens. I understand Onward has changed their mission since that point, but there was still a lot of time and effort and money invested in collecting 500 ideas from citizens, and it went nowhere again. like the archery park and the Design South Dakota projects. Those are things that, I don't know if we as commissioners and administrators realize what the public thinks when those things come out. I mean, I would talk to 1,000 people a week in my store, and I would hear all the time, it's like, what's going on with this? What's going on with this? You ask for our input, you ask us to come to meetings, you ask us what we'd like to see, you create all these designs and these goals and these dreams, and then nothing happens. And it is disheartening to citizens that get their hopes up thinking things are going to get done, and they don't. And it's frustrating.
Yeah, I do
And it's
think,
hard to explain, as you know, to people too, that there are legitimate reasons why some things don't happen. There are.
yeah, that's
And I
very
don't
true.
know.
Yeah.
That was before you were involved in YAPG back then, and I don't know whatever became of the idea. I don't know if Bruce said it could never happen, if your board members wanted to go on in some different direction with a different project, that I don't know. As I was thinking through this, like I said, this is a piece of an article I wrote last fall pertaining to some other issues that commissioners were having, but it's just another idea that popped into my head, and it's a great idea, and there's no reason we couldn't do it since we're the World Archery Center. We got the president living here. I mean, where else in America should you build these things if not here?
Yeah. So I just wanted to say, when I read that in your advertisement, I thought you were implying that the archery center itself had not achieved a lot of
Oh,
things. And
no,
looking
no,
at
no.
the archery center, it's had 2 major
Bruce is,
expansions. There's a whole lot happening out there. And so I just
Bruce,
wanted to clarify
oh no.
that statement.
This is, like I said, this is the World Center and the world's president of it. It's like, and that's been a while ago. I mean, I don't know if people on Yankton Thrive's board now even remember that. I just remember it because I was involved in it. I was part of the planning, what we'd like to see out, a nice hotel, a couple restaurants, maybe somebody's research and development center, shipping warehouses, anything involved with that. Bruce is already living here. He's got the connections. He has the names. Who could make it happen if not him and the city?
Yeah. So to not speak too far out of turn, yes, there have been prospects who have looked at that piece of property, but as you well know from previous city economic development prospects and conversations,
Yep.
Getting it to the finish line is
Right.
a very challenging ordeal from a financial perspective, usually.
It
So
is.
just because there's nothing built there does not mean nothing has been prospected or explored.
That's good.
Just never got to the finish line. So
See, that's what I enjoy doing. I like getting projects finished and show the citizens, we did listen, we did act, we did,
So let's talk about something really positive. Your favorite 3 things about Yankton.
Oh, there's a lot, but I mean, I spent 35 years running a store where I talked to 1,000, 1,500 people a week, every week. I've talked to millions of people how many times? And, this was the only place I ever lived in my life more than 3 years until we moved to Yankton. So it is home to me, and I love the fact that people are willing to talk to me and share things with me and ideas and plans and dreams. And, the people of Yankton, the Yankton region, to me, are easily my number one thing I enjoy about Yankton. And I enjoy being out amongst them too, visiting and doing things. But number 2, Cheryl and I were big outdoor people, which, really made Yankton even more important to me. we are big bicycle walking trail people. The bridges, the river, the dam, the trails around town, the tennis courts. I mean, we love the outdoor stuff that's available to somebody that lives in this region. And number 3, on all of the different boards and committees and commissions and things I've sat on over the years, I have always been very, very impressed by the level of involvement the citizens in Yankton have in their town. You can be a part of a group or an organization in this town that basically is involved in anything you have an interest in. Um, we have so many people that want to make such a difference in so many different areas that is, as I've mentioned a number of times, I said we have a very highly engaged community. We need to turn them loose. We need to get them involved in things, get things they can be a part of, and take advantage of that. I mean, most communities, as I said, I spent a lot of time in a lot of other towns working on things, and I've always come back to Yankton and I'm impressed by how connected our community is to events and to causes. So there's plenty of others, but I mean, those are the three that really stuck out when I read the question.
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
So, on the November ballot, there may be a measure to eliminate the tax on food, and this could potentially create a large loss for local revenue. How would you see that impacting the budget, and what would you propose doing differently to create a balanced budget?
Well, and that was, we alluded to that a little earlier, that this is something coming from the state level down, and it's not going to happen to Yankton. It's going to happen to every city in South Dakota. But it is the 24 budget, I'm sure, had to have discounts applied to every line of the budget in case it had to affect this year's budget. And the 25 budget, if I'm a part of the commission, I mean, you're definitely going to have to go through every single line of 100 pages and assign a 10, 20, 40% cut if and when this happens. The last estimate I had that was still kind of a loose estimate was about $1 million a year out of the city's budget, which to a citizen not involved in it may not sound like a lot of money in a $70 million budget. But as you and I know, a lot of that $70 million is restricted for only certain things. You can't move it around. The water, wastewater, recycling, transfer station, second penny sales tax, those are for those only to sustain them. You can't. So $1 million is a pretty good sized hit to all of the amenities that it's going to have to be applied to. And like I said, the 25's budget, you're going to have to do that. Just as a precaution, and from what myself and I'm sure what you've heard is it's more than likely going to go into effect. So you plan ahead for it, you'll make allowances for it for 25, but I'm not going to be a commissioner in the 26 budget that says we can't reinstate any of those things. I'm not like that. It's too many years in business, I guess, but as you know, as well as most people in a business or an organization, there's always an outside influence trying to stop your success. And your level of success is determined by how you overcome those things. So if the state's going to take $1 million away from Yankton sales tax revenue, my thought process is the next year I am going to go out and recruit $1 million worth of sales tax revenue into Yankton. I'm not going to sit there in 26 and say, United Way, we can't reinstate you. You're staying what you were in 25. I'm not that kind of I'm not that kind of businessman, and I'm not that kind of politician. I said, if that has to be done, that means the city didn't do anything to correct that $1 million cut from the year before. And again, in my personal opinion, we need to get out and figure out a way to recruit that kind of money back into town. You can't just be happy taking those cuts and everybody's going to stay at that level forever going forward. It's not acceptable in my mind.
So let's talk about community involvement, which you're very proud that Yankton has so much of it. Commissioners and staff work hard to share necessary project details in the paper, at news briefings, at meetings. And we have seen over the past year some citizens feeling that they have not had enough access to information, or information may have not been available early enough in the process. So thinking about the challenges at West Side Park Pond and the removal of the tree, do you think anything in that process needs to change?
Well, definitely. I mean, I didn't read the question as just specifically to West Side Park only. I read it as, a lot of things that go on with the commission. I mean, in business all my life and on the commission for 6 years, I mean, there are things that have to be kept private, and there's no doubt about that. I mean, that's just the way businesses operate. But there are plenty of things, pertaining to West Side Park's tree, pertaining to the Summit Activity Center's closing. There's a couple there. I mean, those are things that had no reason to be kept quiet. You can say they talked about this at a Parks Board, but the citizens of Yankton don't read Parks Board minutes. If the commission, specifically to your West Side Park question, would have came out and said, the engineers say the tree has to come down so we can structurally repair the island and put a wall around the island, citizens would have known. It wouldn't have been a shock to them when this tree started getting cut down. They wouldn't have reacted the way they did, and the city wouldn't have had to take time out of their schedules to respond to the reactions. The Summit Center, people get letters in the mail saying it's closing. I said, why wasn't there a public statement that it was closing? You created the 2 work sessions that happened because of that, because it wasn't just made public. So again, financial things, titles of businesses interested in Yankton, there are specific things that have to be confidential. And the city does a good job. I mean, to be honest, the city does a very good job trying to be as transparent as they can. This West Side Park example was just one that I thought wasn't handled well. I mean, I pay attention to it. I saw the renderings for the park. I knew the tree was going to be gone, but I don't think you can assume putting a rendering in a city commissioner's packet for a meeting is not the same as making the citizens aware of it. And that was the only issue I had with the example you gave. That was a very simple thing that could have been avoided and avoided a whole lot of trouble on everybody's part.
So when we think about transparency, I want to go back to that article once again, or that advertisement. When you say commissioners were intentionally kept in the dark for as long as possible to ensure its success in reference to the Huther Family Aquatic Center.
Yeah.
Can you explain that comment a little bit more? I wasn't really sure where you were coming from on that.
Well, and I didn't, I've never really discussed it publicly. There's, outside of the Parks Board members who, you can talk to Brian Schoenfelder, Darcy Briggs, Tom Nelson, whoever was on that Parks Board at that time, Carson Schott, and they can tell you what was going on. I mean, the idea to do the new aquatic center was mine, and the idea to do it all at the Parks Board level was mine and the Parks Board. That was our decision to do it on the Parks Board level with Director Larson, and we had done all of the behind-the-scenes work necessary. We had the finances, the cost estimates, the loose kind of renderings of the project. And we did that intentionally because of what happened the last couple opt-outs that had gone on with the pool, where commissioners had got involved before the votes, tried to sabotage it, tried to get involved in it. And we just decided there was no reason to make it a public issue until it needed to be a public issue. We were operating on the assumption that this is how we'd like to proceed. This is the plan we're taking. We're doing all the work behind the scenes. And at some point, if we're comfortable with it going forward and going public, then we are going to have a local citizens group take it public and do the events around town and get the opt-out set up. And we had watched the county and the school board fail a couple times on opt-outs, and every time was a county commissioner or a school board member sitting in front of a room full of people telling them this is what we want. And we weren't going to approach it that way. We were going to do all the work necessary, and if we never would have had a Josh Svatos and a Casey Haberman come forward and say, we'll take it, I don't know if it would have ever gone any further than that. But the reason we did it on the Parks Board and the reason we rolled it out as a citizens-driven initiative was for those very reasons of why they failed at the county and the city and why the pool issues had failed previously too was, there are people in Yankton that don't want Yankton to move forward, and there are people in Yankton that will sabotage something just because they don't approve of it. But your job as a city commissioner, and I've said this, I don't know how many times, but the 9 city commissioners are the board of directives for Yankton, board of directors. The city manager is the manager that's hired to operate the day-to-day operations. And if you're going to be a board of director, you have to look into the future, like I said previously, and you've got to push Yankton. You've got to make Yankton do things they're not comfortable doing, as you're well aware of. It's like there's a lot of things in Yankton that are like pulling teeth, dragging people by the hair. It's like the bridge was the same way. I had people just attacking me. I was on the Parks Board chairman at the time, and I had people literally attacking me that Yankton was going to take possession of that bridge from the state. What in the blank are you going to do with that? And after it was done and remodeled and reopened, I've had half a dozen of the same people came and thanked, and I'm sure they thanked other commissioners too, but I mean, they thanked us for doing what we did. People drive from Scotland every week to walk that bridge. I mean, people, but again, as you're well aware of, it's like there are things going on that are literally like pulling people by the hair to get them to come along and do it. And whether I'm a sadist or not, I enjoy doing those things. I enjoy getting things done for Yankton that haven't been done. So to the transparency part of it, I mean, I hope that explained it. You can ask me anything about it.
No, I just wanted to clarify because when you made the comment of intentionally kept in the dark, that sounded like you were implying there was not transparency in the process. But as you just said, those conversations that you had happened at a park board level.
They did.
And park boards are a public meeting.
They are.
That they do have minutes. Public is able to attend those meetings. So while you use the phrase kept in the dark, they still were public meetings.
Yeah, they were. And every step of the way, we had to get like city commission approval to pay for a rendering, to pay for a cost estimate. They were discussed at city commission meetings. They just weren't, here's the plans, here's the step we're on, here's what we're going to do next. And as I said, it was intentional. I mean, we watched 4 opt-outs fail in the previous 6 or 7 years by the school board in the county. We had one shot at doing this, and we were going to try and maximize our chances for it to succeed. And that was very early on in the beginning, we decided that when it came time to become a public event, there was not going to be any city commissioner or parks board member associated with it. It was going to be your neighbors talking to your friends about this project. And if you want to do it, it'll go to an opt-out, and you'll have a chance to vote. And we made it as consumer friendly as we could possibly make it. So it wasn't something that you thought was getting shoved down your throat. And, thank God it passed, and we moved forward, and we got a new athletic center that people from all over the region are coming and using now. So
yeah, it's a good example of wading through the adversity, and to have a really great project on at the finish line for that, because it really is a nice amenity for Yankton.
As you're aware of, I mean, you don't want to cause more problems than you need to.
Well said. The city's embarking on updating the comprehensive plan. With all your big ideas, what would you like to include in it?
Well, I have a lot of big ideas, but we got to figure out a way to fund them in the first place. But number one has got to be saving the bridge. And again, all these comprehensive plans are another set of city staff have ideas, 9 commissioners have ideas, the board members that you sit on as commissioners have ideas. I mean, it's a whole shuffling again of ideas, but my personal thoughts, I want the bridge to have some kind of action set up to save it. I want Yankton, the city of Yankton, to set something up to, I guess the easiest way to say it, they need to do something to have somebody responsible for increasing our sales tax revenues, somebody accountable for it, somebody you can go talk to, like I said, and say, hey, we're losing $1 million next year. What's your plan to recover that? There's nobody. And I left that point at the end before, that who are you going to go talk to about that? And even after we have this discussion and this election, who are you going to go talk to about that? You can't keep having all these ideas that everybody wants and are legitimately great ideas if you have no plan in place of how you're going to fund them. So, you get the 20 people in the room trying to come up with ideas. Those are my two main ideas. I still want to see something, with Paul Lowry's Gurney Flats is a great addition to downtown. We harped on downtown housing for years. And I would still like to see something like the facade grant program set up. That's second, third, fourth floor housing grant program to get whatever spaces downtown in the Meridian District that aren't already developed for apartment space. Here's a dollar for dollar match if you make a apartment space up there for us. It's still, in my opinion, that's still the heart of the town. It's 90% occupied with businesses. It's almost full. I can only think of a couple that are empty. And almost all of them have second, third, fourth floors that, some are storage, some have some office. But I mean, in an opportunity that the people that haven't developed their upper floors, here's a dollar for dollar match like the facade grant program is. Would you be interested in doing it then? And get more people down there.
Yeah, and just to add for the viewing audience, Nate Stencil and the Stencil Group are the ones who are doing the Gurney Flats down there, and that's the group that you would contact if you're looking to rent space down there. And then,
Paul was just the Yankton frontman. Stencil are the contractors.
Yeah, he sold them the land. And then, as I'm reminding all the viewers when I'm doing these interviews, the comprehensive plan to the city is a working, living, breathing document. They do not do this plan and bookshelf it. They use it when they make decisions for years going forward. And so that's why it's so very important to get the community to come together, share your ideas. It might not make it in the plan, or it might make it in the plan in one of the out years. It may be able to be funded, it may be not, but it's still included in the plan. And so that's very important as the visioning comes together for this document.
I think the current one is almost 20 years old, isn't it? I mean, it's old. It needs to be updated. And again, to your point, speak up, put your dreams out there, see if they get involved in it. I mean, this is your chance.
Yeah, and just because your idea is not included does not mean it's something that will never happen.
No.
Because it does have to have limits to what they put in the comprehensive plan. But
that sparks, that could spark somebody else in some other organization to say, hey, that's something we could take on. It sparks interest amongst other groups too, whether it becomes part of the plan or not.
So is there anything that you wanted to include in this interview today that was not a part of a previously asked question?
No, I clearly I'm not a 1 or 2 minute answer kind of person. So I very much appreciate Yankton Thrive doing these interviews. I've always been the person that I want you to understand completely the issue, what we think the solution is, what my opinion is. I spent my whole life listening to people and gathering information and paying attention, and I want people to be as totally informed as they can possibly be. So thank you again for doing this. Thank you for the citizens that watch this. My name is Craig Sommer. It's Sommer, and I am at craigsummer@midco.net, and I am at 660-5173. If there was a question you have that wasn't asked today, if there was an answer you would like explained in more detail, do not hesitate for a second to reach out to me about it. I'll come talk to your coffee club, your business, your board, your service groups. I'll answer one question, I'll answer them for an hour. Whatever you'd like to know to make a good informed decision on April 9th, again, don't hesitate to reach out to me.
Well, thank you for spending the last 45 minutes with me in this David Leonard style interview, as we had talked about prior to recording.
I warned you. It was like.
Well, we appreciate you coming in, and if you've made it this far, we do hope you make the effort to get out and vote. April 9th, if you want to vote on Election Day. And we do want to thank Mid-Continent Communications as our sponsor for Coffee with the Candidates. Thank you so much for joining us today, Craig.
Thank you, Nancy.